Well, in the next series of videos on anaemia, we're thinking about the consequences of anaemia. Not so much the clinical features, but the consequence for individuals and for communities. And the first one might be fairly obvious, tiredness and fatigue. Because there's no oxygen going to the muscles, or insufficient oxygen going to the muscles, people get tired. And of course, this is going to reduce their ability to work. These people are going to be able to work less. And studies have shown that if we correct the anaemia, that's going to increase the workload by between 5 and 17% just by correcting anaemia. So people will be able to grow 5 to 17% more food. It's a significant difference. Now, in anemic populations, there's going to be an increase in mortality. An overall increase in death rate. And Scott and his co-workers in Africa found that between 28 days and 12 years of age, that if you took children that were anemic, every time you increase their hemoglobin by 10 grams per litre of blood, every time you could increase their hemoglobin back towards normal levels, that would reduce mortality by 24%, which I think is quite an amazing finding. So if you take anemic children, if you increase their hemoglobin by 10 grams a litre back towards normal, that will decrease mortality by 24%, just that one simple intervention. And I don't expect you to take my word for that. I'm putting a link to the primary research at the bottom of in the links. Now, another problem with anemia is if the blood supply is not going to the brain, well, the blood's going to the brain, but the oxygen's not, cognitive loss. The ability to think is going to be reduced. And in children less than 2, this will be permanent. They will have a cognitive deficiency for the rest of their life if they're anemic up to the age of 2. And again, studies have quantified this, that there's lower IQ, the intelligence quotient, and that works out at 2 points per 10 grams a litre of hemoglobin. So again, quantified, demonstrated effect. So if you can increase hemoglobin levels back towards normal, that will result in higher IQs, especially in the children you're treating. But if you don't intervene before the age of 2, then that can be a permanent loss of intelligence and cognitive ability. You're probably getting the impression already that these conditions affect children primarily, and well, not primarily, but they have a disproportionate effect on children. And as well, as we might expect, maternal anemia. If mothers are anemic. And this is associated with 20% of maternal deaths. So where the mother dies in the perinatal period, 20% of those are going to be anemic. And in some areas, studies are in parts of India, for example, that figure rises to 40%. So again, a simple intervention, correct maternal anemia as early in pregnancy as possible, preferably before conception, but that will reduce maternal deaths. So we get reduced deaths. We can reduce mortality if we reduce the anemia. And again, I've got a link below that shows that in some areas 20 to 40% of maternal deaths are associated with maternal anemia. Now, as well as that, there's increased blood loss during delivery. So anemic mums are more likely to bleed during delivery and there's an increase in the problem and the incidence of postpartum hemorrhage. PPH. And some studies have shown, and again the figures are quite amazing, that postpartum hemorrhage is 17 times more likely. So by preventing the anaemia, we can prevent a lot of the postpartum hemorrhage, which of course is tragically a cause of death, or potential cause of death. Now, another consequence of anaemia is low birth weights. Actually, there's more premature babies and lower birth weights. So there's more prem babies. There's more premature babies, and there's lower birth weights. Of children born to anemic mothers. So again, if we can treat the anaemia in the pregnant mum, we'll get less premature births and we'll get less low birth weight babies. And these babies will have, the more anemic the mother, the greater the mortality of the babies. So mortality in the babies is increased when there's more anaemia in the mother. Reduce the anaemia in the mother and you reduce perinatal mortality. And again, this has been quantified by studies. It's been shown that there's if we treat anemia, so let's make a point and just point that out now actually. So in pregnancy, give iron if mothers are anemic, and folic acid. Ideally, of course, we prevent them before conception takes place, but there's still great efficacy in treating these during pregnancy. And the earlier in pregnancy, the better. And if we do this, then this is going to, studies have shown that treating anemia effectively is going to reduce perinatal mortality. It will reduce perinatal mortality, and the figure there is 40% in the first day of life, so we can have 40% more of the babies surviving during the first day of life. And studies have also shown that infant mortality will also reduce infant mortality. For the first 7 years of life, so it's from birth to the first 7 years. Although of course other studies have shown that mortality is reduced if we treat anemia for the first 12 years of life. So remember, anemic mothers will have 40% more perinatal mortality. 40% more children will die on the first day if they're anemic. If we treat anemia in pregnancy, the earlier the better, we can reduce perinatal mortality by 40%. And by treating anemia, we can also reduce infant mortality in the first 7 years, and other studies have shown up to the first 12 years of life. And of course we want to make sure that the children aren't anemic either. So really quite shocking figures. Children and young women dying at really what is alarming levels, because anemia is often not properly corrected. Links at the bottom. Put this into practice in your communities.